Hello, everybody. Welcome to PantheraTV Live. We're just getting started and waiting for everyone to join us. Hello, hello. It is Monday, March 8th, and it is a very special day because it is International Women's Day, and we have a very special Panthera TV Live for you today featuring one of our amazing women conservationists. So I'm just going to give a little bit more time for people to log on, and then we will invite her in. So today we celebrate women. We celebrate women in conservation. We celebrate women in communities that live alongside cats. We celebrate all women working to challenge things in the world that tell them they can't do what they want to do. And in honor of it and to celebrate it, I'm very, very happy to introduce and to bring on our wonderful Dr. Allison Devlin. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited for this. This is going to be really awesome.
Yeah, thank you for everything. I'm really looking forward to this. And if connection drops out, send me a note and I hope we can get back on.
Where are you calling in from today?
So I'm based in Montana. I'm doing a postdoctoral researcher position between the University of Montana and Panthera, so based in Missoula.
Great. And why don't you go ahead and introduce a little bit more? You kind of just gave us a little taste of it, but tell us more about yourself and why and how you work with Panthera.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Allison Devlin. I got my PhD in ecology. I studied jaguar population biology and movement in the Brazilian Pantanal. And I've been working with Panthera researchers for the better part of a decade at this point, doing my graduate work and now fortunately continuing on with a postdoctoral researcher position. So I'm working with the broader Jaguar program now, mainly in human-wildlife conflict. So adapting what we've learned about jaguars in the field and using that to help inform anti-predation techniques throughout jaguar range.
That's very cool. What's your favorite thing about studying jaguars?
Oh gosh, I would say about any of the cats, I just love where they take you with some of the locations we've gone to in search of the cats themselves or where they've been moving. It takes you to some stunning landscapes and to some really amazing places. And everyone that I've worked with has been so passionate about studying them and working with them. And I think it's just been an incredible experience, not only to study the cats themselves, but to work with some fantastic colleagues along the way.
Yeah, and so today is International Women's Day, so I'm going to have to ask, how do the women that you come across in the communities you work alongside, how are they especially important in mitigating this conflict and helping to, promote conservation for jaguars and other wildlife?
Sure. No, that's a great question. So I think just in general, working with so many different folks from different walks of life, everyone has their own experiences that they're bringing to the table. And regardless of where you go, I think everyone is very fascinated by big cats. They capture the imagination. If you're living alongside them, they bring their own challenges if you have to live with them every single day. Where we see some of the conflict is with the communities that are subsisting on livestock. So there are smaller family farms. There are also very large ranches that have giant herds of cattle. But when we're working with these communities that rely on livestock for their livelihood, it's just a day-to-day balance of, or trying to achieve a balance of living alongside these predators. So trying to help bring everyone to the table, because you have different experiences with the cowboys that are working with the cattle, and then in a lot of these communities, the women are taking care of the children. They may be helping to maintain the living spaces, and they see a lot more wildlife approaching closer to the homes each day, and we've had some great conversations with some of the women in the communities about ideas that they have for helping to protect the homes, and if they have smaller livestock that they keep nearby.
Mm-hmm.
I would say one experience that I had in Pontinol, and this was on a trip to visit a local school, and one of the young families was there, and most of the people were walking around talking with people, doing a mini, I guess, tour of the area. But one of the mothers of the children there was making coffee. So I sat down to talk with her, and she started to describe how recently a jaguar had started killing some of their chickens. And I just naturally was talking with her about this over the cup of coffee, and she, of course, was concerned for her family, for the livelihood, and that sparked a bigger conversation, and that got more people to recognize that this family was having an issue, and the group that we were with ended up being able to help install an anti-predation fencing and help to restore some of the chickens that were lost due to the jaguar predation. So it was, I think, some of these more organic type conversations, and just some of the creative ideas that we've heard from talking with folks just from all different walks of life. Yeah.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I think, we talk a lot about how we work alongside ranchers, and, we talk about that, but we forget to sometimes focus in on how these communities are made up of all different people. It's not just your stereotypical man, and that everyone interacts with wildcats in their own way, and that understanding those interactions and understanding everyone involved is really going to be important in saving them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's been incredibly, I feel very fortunate to have worked with many different researchers and colleagues, and I think having as many people putting their minds to helping to solve these complex issues is just going to make the solutions that much more resilient. So fortunately, I've worked with some fantastic people, past and present at Panthera, brilliant ecologists, and of course seeing some of the female colleagues that are more quantitative minded, or they really do like working in remote locations, and just what different skill sets you can bring to the table that, why wouldn't you want to engage with as many folks as possible to help create these solutions? Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think that's something that as a society we're coming around to more. I think every year we have International Women's Day, and I see it get bigger and bigger. And it's important. It's still really important that we celebrate it. And, can you speak to why you think it's important that we acknowledge this day and the contributions that women have made?
Sure. So I think for this day in particular, I know that each year there's a different theme for the international recognition of Women's Day, and just to serve, for me at least, serve as inspiration for future generations to say, whatever opportunities you might have, that's at least you have those opportunities to pursue what might be your passion, what might be how you feel you can best contribute to the to improving the status of society, or if you have family that you want to help support, if you have a talent, like I mentioned, in mathematics or sciences, or you're in the more creative fields, having that opportunity to pursue that and really fulfill what might be your dream or what you want to see as your role in contributing. So, yeah, I'm not sure if you have any other points that you would want to add for that, but I really think it's about just trying to reach the potential that you dream for yourself, or maybe that you have an inspiring female mentor that you would see and say, maybe I could do that someday too.
So which women have inspired you? I mean, growing up and throughout your career?
Sure. So I fortunately have had some great mentors throughout my life, and I'd say to celebrate the female mentors that I've had, or at least the women that have inspired me. There was one, I never met her. I unfortunately learned about her right after she passed away. It's about 20 years at this point now. So I was still in high school and just transitioning into college. But there was this wildlife veterinarian who worked for Wildlife Conservation Society, Dr. Annalisa Kilborn, and she did some incredible work studying wildlife diseases, and she was among the first to identify the connection between Ebola and its infection with wild gorillas. And she developed some really interesting strategies for trying to help the communities that lived alongside those. And she spoke 7 languages. She had a pilot's license, and seeing her career, learning about it, was just an inspiration to me. And at the early stages, I was thinking, do I want to be a zoo curator, wildlife vet, field biologist? And I guess that set the bar for, wow, that's a really incredible person who made some excellent contributions to the world. And unfortunately, she just passed away at a young age, early into her career. But, you know, with the life that she did have, she made some amazing contributions. So I think that really inspired me for what, you know, someone could achieve with doing this kind of work.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, of course, through the years, having female mentors that have either taken me under their wing and just made it seem possible that I could have a career in wildlife, whether it was a zoo curator or meeting some excellent researchers early on in the field. Dr. Rebecca Foster was an excellent one. During her PhD, I helped assist on their project while she was researching Jaguars in Belize on the way for her PhD. And I'm so happy that she's in this field. Of course, female, like I mentioned, there are so many inspiring colleagues at Panthera. Of course, what you and your colleagues are doing too to help spread the message about wildlife and reach a bigger audience. So yeah, and going through academia, I would say my PhD advisor definitely taught me to pursue truth no matter what the challenges might be. So that was, I think, a very good mentor for knowing how to, I guess, maintain the importance of the research. And I think that's just, you know, taught me so many different life skills along the way. So I do feel very fortunate to have some very strong role models going through the career path that I've had.
That's great. And what is it like being a woman in this field? Because I think it's fair to say that wildlife conservation is probably a male-dominated field, like many fields. So what's it like being a woman, what you do?
Sure. So I would say, unfortunately, I've had some excellent colleagues to work with on the professional level. And for some of the field work, you do see more men, but with the education, I would say in the undergraduate programs, graduate programs, we're seeing this shift. So it's you're seeing a lot more women, especially going into ecology, wildlife conservation, and it might be a few more years before we start seeing that shift on a bigger scale. I know some parts are seeing that reflected, but I think this next generation coming through is going to be pretty excellent for, I guess, bringing that more even dynamic. But I would say going to the field and being in the field for 6 months at a time during the PhD, it's just a matter of going out and being very focused. I would say sunrise to sunset was out there helping clear trails, setting up camera traps, and maybe just leading by example, just being willing to go out and do the work to get the camera traps set and help to establish the transects and do the surveys, and just being present and willing to, spend a lot of hours in a physically demanding setting, going through some rough terrain, but it's fun. I would say I just love being in the field. I stay very focused the whole time because I know there's only a limited amount of time to do the work that I'm there to do. But yeah, and I think growing up, being out in the field, having a supportive family has definitely helped with that. But yeah, I would say in some places, if it's not yet where you do see many women in the field doing that more physically demanding part of the work, that, you know, being able to carry your backpack and hiking, just enjoying the time outdoors is a whole other experience that, I don't know, I love having that connection, and I see my time behind the computer as earning my time in the field. So I think that carries through in the work of being able to do that. So
That's a good point. Yeah. I think a lot of, obviously you do a lot of great field work, but a lot of what you do is also more behind a desk, behind a screen, more
yeah.
academic. I know when I was in grad school and I was pursuing a career in wildlife conservation, I had a professor tell us, when you go to publish your papers, at first use your initials, because if your name, it comes across as automatically feminine, you have a statistically less chance of it getting accepted for publication. I don't know where he got that stat from. It does not surprise
Okay.
me, but I remember hearing that and going, wow, that's interesting. That definitely hits you. So have you
Right.
come across these kind of instances in academia, or do you think, what kind of improvements have you
Mhm.
seen?
Sure. So I think, at least with the mentors that I've had in academia and in the papers that I've submitted for review, I haven't encountered that, but I'm sure I've heard of colleagues indicating that at sometimes with the reviewer, you might get feedback that um, might not match with what the content of the work was. So I would say it's something, fortunately, and knock on wood with that, I haven't personally experienced in the work that I've submitted, but I'm sure others could likely speak to their direct experiences with that. I think, again, maybe it's just um, something that I've had where I just maintain focus on what I do. And I think that as long as it's a constructive critique, constructive criticism, I'll pay attention to it. But if it's something that isn't helpful for developing a better project or a better paper, I just tend to disregard it. So that might be, if I picked up on those a bit more, maybe, but constructive criticism I'll definitely take to heart. So, yeah.
Yeah, and wildlife conservation is such a multifaceted field. You have, like you mentioned, the qualitative analyses that go into determining things about animals and what we need to do to save them. And then you have the efforts on the ground to protect them and to work with communities, and it could go on and on. But why is it so important for women to be ingrained in each and every one of these aspects?
hmm That's a great question. Again, I think it brings a diversity of experience and thought that maybe because of a certain role in the community, that if that voice wasn't present at the table, that might be missed, and a potential solution might not be as viable as if you did have input from women who are experiencing a certain part of that day-to-day life with carnivores, or if they have a certain perspective on, well, if we have this support, that will help me in my day, so that could free up time for me to do these other things. I think one of the really great points that I've learned through the course of the project is when in our ranches in the Pontinal, the research ranch that we have, Fazenda Joffre Valley, there is a school, and that brings the children from neighboring ranches to the school for lessons. And the school teacher there also did some excellent work with night classes, teaching adults who never attended school to read and write. And by bringing the children to this local school, the families no longer had to split up. And the men would usually stay to work the cattle. The women would go with their children to the cities, and they would be separated until the men had time off to reconnect. But now that the school is local, that means that the families can stay together, and that means that they can maintain that really nice family unit that otherwise they wouldn't have been able to have. So, these are different aspects of conservation that I think really help to either provide opportunities for coexisting with predators, but also for helping lift the community as well. And that's from input from the people that live locally every day. And with those opportunities, we've also seen an increase in ecotourism. There's been an increase in the number of female guides. I think they've been some dynamic women, of course, very adventurous and very smart and able to handle very difficult situations. And even that in a day-to-day life, to see guides driving their own boats up and down the rivers, and for the younger generation to see something like that. We're starting to hear some of the children now say that they want to be an ecotourism guide when they grow up, which is kind of cool to see. And then from the school teacher, she's brought in doctors to help with medical visits, and now some of the children are saying that they want to be doctors when they grow up. And it's about increasing that exposure and, like I mentioned, the opportunities that might arise from bringing this and taking conservation to some new creative levels. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so great to hear. It sounds like there's a really strong link between gender equality and equity and the ability and desire to protect wildlife and wild places.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because to view humans as part of nature, it's also viewing humans as, we're cohesive communities in a way. So by helping to bring everyone to the table, that can also help for perspectives to expand and recognize we're part of this ecosystem as well, and just taking more care with what we're bringing, and not only for our generation, but for future generations too.
That's very well said.
Yeah,
I know there's so many girls and young women out there who are wanting to do what you do and wanting to get into wildlife conservation, wanting to save the world. What advice do you have for these people?
Yeah, oh, that's a great question. I would say, well, for me, I was inspired by seeing people and reading about people's work and saying that's an actual career you can do, and I think it's about learning what skill sets you have. One of the great parts of growing up is that you're like a sponge absorbing all of these different parts of the world and knowledge. And if something catches your passion, that's something that, pursue that passion as well. If you have a more practical side that you have to fulfill, just always keep that passion in mind, because once you get your foot in the doors can start to open even more. And it takes perseverance for sure. I would say if it doesn't happen right away, that's something that maybe down the road when you're in a more stable position, you can then engage and have a bit more self-direction with. But for me, I just love to read on my own time. School projects I would do on wildcats whenever I could. It was a way of working it into my day-to-day life. If you have certain challenges and you think that it teaches you a certain life skill that maybe it doesn't seem like it would make sense at the time, but you might face that further down the road, or learning how to handle difficult situations can really help in engaging with people on different levels. So I think any experience that you're gaining as you're moving toward a career path, or if you're trying to even just find a volunteer position or a niche or paid positions, you'll have a unique skill set. It's just about figuring out what skill set you do have. And like I mentioned, if you love mathematics, there's a field of quantitative ecology you can contribute to. If you like coding and computers, there's also a part of ecology that you can contribute. If you like more creative types and you like to do more of a storytelling mode, you can help wildlife by spreading that information. It really is about finding what you want to contribute to the world and bringing that to the table. So yeah, otherwise, once you have that core passion, you can then start researching certain programs. If you're at the age of high school, starting to look into college, there are some great college programs that have really good ecology background or conservation. If you want to go into animal science, that's the track that I took. But even if you've done a different career path, I know of many people that join conservation as a second career. So there have been engineers, lawyers, pilots that decide, you know what, I've done my 10 to 15 years in this career and I've decided I want to go on and continue and shift gears and go into wildlife. So it's not, I would say, don't count yourself out if you feel that you've pursued a business degree and you don't think that's relevant, because anything that you can bring to the table is. And I know folks have had some very successful careers and continuing on with that too. So yeah, I would say for the career path that I've taken, I knew that I wanted to develop projects and keep working in the field. So I went into animal science for undergrad. For my master's project, I did conservation biology. I developed my own project, and that's when I got funding with the Kaplan Graduate Award with Panthera. And then I was just prompted after the master's to keep asking big questions, and I developed a PhD project. And I knew the PhD would hopefully turn into a postdoc and then eventually full-time position, but that's the career path that I chose to pursue. And fortunately, it has worked out with some great mentors. But I think anyone that you talk to in this field, they always say, don't listen to what my path was. It was very windy, and I think that's part of the strength of conservation too, is that you get people who have different backgrounds, different skill sets, and just know that you'll need to have some tenacity with it, especially if you're maybe a first-time college, if it's your first time attending college, even in your family. If you don't have immediate female mentors, just know that it's also just kind of holding to that dream and keeping that alive, no matter what your path is, and eventually trying to work your way toward that.
That is great advice. Very well said. We have some audience members commenting that your advice is very inspiring, and I'd like to second that sentiment.
Thank you.
I love what you said about don't count yourself out, right? I think that goes for anything. Doesn't matter your background, your gender, where you come from, what you do, what you want. Don't count yourself out, because you can always do what you want to do and accomplish your dreams and help protect wildcats and protect the wild places where they live.
Absolutely.
And for those of you who aren't already, I highly suggest you go to panthera.org and sign up for our email list, because you will get monthly e-news that includes all different cool videos and blogs and press releases, information about what we're doing, what our scientists are doing on the ground. And it's a good way for you to stay involved with what Panthera is doing and to find out how you can help us promote the message and help protect wildcats, and some fun stuff as well. So Allison, thank you so much for joining us today on International Women's Day. This was a very inspiring, amazing talk. And if you missed it and you're just joining in, don't worry. It will be posted on all of our social channels by this afternoon. So thank you again for joining us. It was an honor to have you talking to us.
Yeah, thank you so much for the great discussion. And thanks to everyone who's tuned in. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you. So
thank you.
Goodbye, everybody, and we'll see you for the next Panthera TV Live.
Yep. Bye.